We hope you enjoyed this free clip of the Young Turks that you're about to see. Now remember, it's not the whole show. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meanwhile, enjoy this lovely segment. Huge news day for you guys today on the Young Turks. So first on Manafort.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. Hold on Michael Cohen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah. Hold. Okay, we're gonna get to both of those stories. Those are awesome, amazing. Donald Trump is in a world of trouble. The ref is this close to thinking of stepping in. Should I step in? Should I step in? Well, see, it's over. It's over. Okay, I don't know. Not yet. Hold. Oh, hold on, guys. I got a lot of news for you guys, but I want you to whisper of a dream. The day I come on the program, the mother of all,
ladies and gentlemen,
on Donald Trump. I want you to picture that day. And when you know we got him, and you know the Young Turks start at 6 o'clock, and you know I'm gonna come on and play that. How good is that day gonna be? Tick, 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 tick. Okay, so huge news. Furthermore, tonight on the TYT network, here comes Elizabeth Warren. 8:05 p.m. Eastern on Rebel headquarters. Elizabeth Warren's our first guest. We're going to talk about her proposals a little bit later in this program on the Young Turks. You're going to love those proposals. I mean, now we're getting real on getting rid of corruption in the country and in politics. So that's fantastic. So massive show ahead for you guys. If you miss any part of it, just go to tyt.com/join, become a member. It's a show price. It's a tiny little price. You get the progressive Netflix, home of progressives. You get all that programming. You get Elizabeth Warren. You'll get all the ladies and gentlemen. We got them. Commercial free and anytime you want. So tyt.com/join. I'm going over here for the first story that's related to progressives. Okay. So Kerri Harris is running for a Senate seat. Whoa, Senate's pretty significant. She's just Democrat, so she believes in all those progressive priorities that you know and love: Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, college for all, and peace. Hey, how about that? Okay, but she takes no corporate PAC money. Now that's a very important part of this story because her opponent takes a lot of it. But we are told that this is impossible. I believe I've heard this story before in 23 previous times. It proved to be untrue as Justice Democrats won their primaries. But guys, this is a Senate seat. Can a person not taking any corporate PAC money that's a just Democrat, that progressive, really win a Senate seat? Okay, that's the question for Kerri Harris. And who's the incumbent now? That's Kerri Harris right there. She's wonderful. She was on Rebel headquarters before. She's got all those great positions. Her opponent is incumbent Tom Carper, who has been in office in Delaware. That's the Senate seat we're talking about here. In Delaware for about 7,000 years in a row, okay? He's held many political positions there. So he actually has a huge track record. Let's look at his record and see if it's worthwhile, because this is the important part. I am told by people in Washington all the time, what are you guys making a big deal out of? All you rascally progressives. These Democrats are fine, they're fine. What are you primarying Tom Carper for? He's a good, solid Democratic vote. All right, I'm gonna tell you his record and then you tell me if you think this is just fine or if Washington is perhaps full of crap. All right, so what did he do recently? He co-sponsored the hashtag Bank Lobbyist Act, supported by, oh right, President Trump, and opposed by nearly all the Democrats. Bank Lobbyist Act sound like it might be good. Maybe you're trying to prevent the banks from lobbying and influencing politicians. No. That was to deregulate the banks. Now there's a lot of banks in Delaware. There's a lot of corporations in Delaware. They set up their LLCs there. And guess what? Tom Carper takes a lot of money from banks, and all of a sudden he wants to deregulate them so they can run roughshod again. And he votes with Trump on it. Who wants this guy? Which progressive thinks, oh, that's great, man. Finally, someone's standing up for the big banks. Okay, I'm not anywhere near done. He voted yes on these Trump nominees: Alex Azar at Health and Human Services, a disaster. Kirstjen Nielsen at Department of Homeland Security, even bigger disaster. Rick Perry, do I have to tell you anything more? Oh, I could tell you more, but oops, I forgot. And Wilbur Ross, a guy accused of stealing $120 million by his colleagues. So he voted yes on all those. Senator Carper votes with Trump over 35% of the time. Now, to give you a baseline, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, etc., vote with Trump about 10% of the time. So there's some votes that you could agree with Trump on. He's accidentally right 10% of the time, apparently. But 35% is a giant number. Why is a Republican, I'm sorry, see, that's a nice Freudian slip. Why is a Democratic senator, and don't get him wrong, he's not Republican, he's a Democrat. Democratic senator from a very blue state like Delaware voted with Trump a huge percentage of the time, and on important issues like banking. But no, hold on, we're not anywhere near done. He also hasn't co-sponsored Medicare for all. Of course, he voted against the amendment, and this is important, to allow importation of prescription drugs from Canada. So why would he do that? Why would he do that? So that the drugs from Canada are the same exact drugs, they just cost a lot less. I mean, unless he was taking money from drug companies and banks, but he wouldn't do that, would he? Of course he would. So let me show you the money. Over $147,000 from JP Morgan and Chase, $64,500 from Citigroup. Those are two giant banks. $63,980 from Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's, hey, look at that, an insurance company, and he votes with the insurance companies so that we pay higher prices on drugs, huh? $62,650 from the particularly obnoxious bank of Wells Fargo. That's all from Open Secrets. Do you think Tom Carper works for you? I got news for you. I know every pundit on television says he's an honorable gentleman from Delaware. How could you possibly say that he might not work for the voters of Delaware? I'm saying it. I want to be absolutely clear. It is institutional, systemic corruption. He takes legalized bribes from these companies and does exactly as he is told. He does not represent you. Why would you vote for him? Delaware is a tiny state. You can make all the difference in the world. Get out there and get into the fight. I mean, you got, look, kerriharris.com/phonebank. That allows you to call in from anywhere to volunteer for her and make all the difference. Do not let these corporatists represent you. This guy, because he's certainly not gonna actually represent you. So why don't you actually get someone who's uncorrupted to represent you, like Kerri Harris in this case? This race is really, really winnable. I want every progressive in the country to get in this fight. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's team is there right now in Delaware, organizing those volunteers. Get in the fight, okay? Oh, Tom, you think I'm done? Tom, I'm not anywhere near done. So, he opposed Obama's proposal to raise the minimum wage $10.10, instead pushed for a lower minimum wage of $9 an hour. No, wrong. We're going for $15 an hour. You still talking about $9, Tom Carper? Okay, he voted against the amendment to prohibit any cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid as a result of Trump's tax bill. Do you understand that? The amendment was do not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Carper voted no. He's like, no. We should be allowed to cut those programs. You think he represents you? You paid into Social Security and Medicare your whole life, but he's ready to take it from you. There's tax cuts for the rich to give. He voted to approve Keystone XL pipeline and also voted to allow offshore drilling multiple times. Of course he did. Who doesn't he work for? Oh, right, the voters of Delaware. He voted to authorize the war in Iraq and recently has continued to vote to increase corporate military spending. Also, one of a small group of Democrats to vote yes on the authorization of use of military force in 2017, which allows President Trump wide latitude to engage in conflicts around the globe, giving Trump the authority to start wars, voted for the Iraq war. Why? Why, if you're a Democrat or a progressive in Delaware, would you give this guy your vote? The minute he wins, you think he cares what you think? No. There's defense contractors that got to make some money. And finally, just to rub a little bit of salt in your wounds, get a load of this. What's the one thing you always hear from the corporatist establishment Democrats? But Cenk, but progressives, you don't understand. The Supreme Court, you have to allow every corporatist Democrat in because of the Supreme Court. Well, let's look into Carper's record on that, because that Kavanaugh guy, not on Carper's watch, right? One of the few Democrats to vote yes on corporate conservative Justice John Roberts, voted against the filibuster of Samuel Alito, and is the only remaining Democrat to vote yes on Kavanaugh to the circuit court. That was to a lower court. Kavanaugh is now up for the Supreme Court. If you weren't paying complete attention and he wasn't in the middle of a primary, are you sure he would actually vote with us on Kavanaugh? I'm not sure. He didn't vote with us on Kavanaugh before. And in fact, he was the only Democrat to vote yes on Kavanaugh because Kavanaugh is an extreme right winger. Carper sees that extreme right winger and goes, that's my kind of guy. Fine, look, I need you to do a couple of things, okay? If you're not sold, go Kerri Harris's website. Go find out her policy position, see if you agree, okay? And then get in the fight. Number two, if you live in Delaware, you gotta go vote. It's a super important primary, okay? Number two, you know someone in Delaware. I know it's a small state, but think about someone you know in Delaware. Call them and ask them to vote in the primary. Number three, for God's sake, volunteer. It makes all the difference, okay? KerriHarris.com/phone bank. Make all the difference. You can get this guy out of office, and you can get Kerri Harris into office and have her actually be a progressive champion in the Senate. We did it before. In fact, we've done it 23 times before with just Democrats. Let's do it again. Let's win a Senate seat. It is incredibly winnable if you get in the fight. We fight for progressives every day here on the Young Turks. All right, that was the appetizer. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna come back. Manafort goes down. Cohen goes down. Now we're having fun. Okay, we'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Kasparian with you guys. A huge news day. I'm gonna read your comments a little bit later, but let's just get to it. Let's do Manafort and Cohen.
All right. Following 4 days of deliberations, the jury in the Paul Manafort case have decided to convict him on 8 counts of bank and tax fraud. However, there were 10 additional counts that they could not decide on, which led to a mistrial. Now, again, he has been convicted of 8 counts of bank and tax fraud. And so as a result, we are now going to await the sentencing in relation to these convictions. The federal jury in Virginia convicted Paul Manafort on these 8 counts Tuesday, but the mistrial was declared on the 10 other charges he faced. There was some expectation that this would happen because before news broke of the convictions, the jury had asked the judge what they should do if the jury can't decide on all of the counts or all of the charges.
So let's get to it, right? I mean,
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Manafort. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Manafort.
Yeah.
So look, don't worry about the 10 that they couldn't convict him on. The 8 are plenty. Those are very significant charges, potential to serve the rest of his life in prison. Now, he will appeal, but even so, he'll be spending all that time in prison. Remember, they revoked his bail at one point. He's been in prison the whole time, and he got convicted, so he will stay in prison even through the appeals. Even if he were to win the appeals, he might spend years in prison, which then makes him think he's 69 years old, man. I mean, he's got nothing left to lose. So tick, 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 tick. Now, so the only card he's got left to play is Trump. Now, does he have anything on Trump? We don't know. Here's how we would find out. If Trump in a panic pardons him. Now remember that this trial was not about Trump.
Right.
Manafort took money from the Russian-linked Ukrainian leaders. He took $60 million and he hid half of it, and that's part of why he got convicted. Tax fraud, right? He didn't report $30 million of it, hid it offshore, etc. right? Now, so that doesn't have necessarily anything to do with Trump. So why would Trump pardon him? But he's been making noise about like, oh, poor Paul Manafort, he's been treated so roughly and unfairly, right? Well, if he pardons him, that means he's got stuff on Trump, 100%, because there's no reason for Trump to get involved in that case unless he knows that Manafort's last card is evidence against Trump.
Right, it is fascinating that as it stands now, it appears that Manafort has not turned on Trump, right? And this case was a difficult procedure for him to go through. And the reason why I say that is because we learned a lot through this case. A lot of evidence, compelling evidence was provided by prosecutors, just to give you an idea of how incredibly dumb and incompetent this man is. Like, he broke all sorts of laws in order to accumulate $60 million, as Cenk mentioned earlier. So over the course of 10 years, he was working as a foreign agent, supporting Russian-backed leaders in Ukraine in order to help Russia annex Crimea. That's part of the thing, part of the issue there, right? So anyway, the $60 million is what I want to focus on. Over the course of 10 years, he hid half of that money to evade taxes, but he went broke. And what did he do after he went broke? He lied to banks in order to get loans. He was so desperate for cash, he lied. How do you blow $60 million in the course of just a short period of time?
That's the problem with a lot of these folks, which is that their greed is infinite. So he spent $15,000 on an ostrich jacket.
And vest.
Okay, to be fair, and the vest.
It had to match the vest.
Oh, well, of course, if you got an ostrich vest, what are you gonna do with it if you don't have an ostrich jacket? He wasted all that money, he broke all these laws. Now, was there something that the Ukrainians and the Russians were expecting in return? Now, the guy he supported is no longer the leader of Ukraine. They've gone in the other direction. Now they're more pro-Western, but the former leader was totally pro-Putin. So what did they expect in return? Well, Manafort, when he was campaign manager for Donald Trump, had control over the Republican Party platform to a large degree at the convention. So what did he do? He changed the platform to soften their stance on Russia as it relates to Ukraine. So he did not want to arm the Ukrainians against Russia. And gee, I wonder if the fact that they paid him $60 million had something to do with the fact that he was trying to influence policy. So you could say, hey, maybe Donald Trump didn't know about that Donald Trump is a fool, which is a good case to make, and that he hired Manafort even though he was clearly working for the Russians, or maybe not clearly enough for Donald Trump. And then he went around and did all these things. He was also at the Trump Tower meeting. He was basically, in a sense, still working for his former employers, the Russians. And so he affected policy on that. So the best case scenario for Donald Trump is, well, golly gee, Donald Trump is so stupid, he couldn't tell his campaign manager was working for a foreign government as he changed policy of the Republican Party to help that foreign government. Congratulations, Trump voters, if that's your best case scenario.
Trump voters, his base at least doesn't seem to care about any of this. But one other thing that I wanted to mention was that Manafort was the only non-Trump family member who attended that meeting with those Russian lawyers. And that was the meeting where Russians claimed to have dirt on Hillary Clinton. Also, I want to kind of break down his charges a little more. So he was guilty of all 5 counts of tax fraud. He was also found guilty for failing to report on his foreign bank account, and then 2 counts of bank fraud. So the bank fraud was when he was trying to get approved for those loans, and he essentially lied to the banks to get those loans. But what I found interesting was that his lawyer said that he wanted to thank the judge for a fair trial. That was his quote following these convictions. And the judge's behavior throughout the course of the trial was fascinating because he was very tough on the prosecutors. Like, the prosecutors would bring up things that I would argue are important to the jurors to take into consideration. And the judge on various occasions would scold the prosecutors for bringing up these pieces of evidence. I don't know, I think maybe the judge wanted to make it abundantly clear that this was a fair trial, and so there wouldn't be an appeal or a retrial as a result. I have no idea, but I just found his behavior interesting.
Well, and the judge is right wing, appointed by Republican presidents, and that's okay, it doesn't matter. So he was so over the top fair that the defense even thanked him, and Manafort still got convicted of the most serious charges. So look, at a bare minimum, the conclusion of this is maybe it's possible, I'm not prejudging here, that Manafort doesn't have any evidence on Donald Trump, and he just did this crime unrelated to Trump, and Trump was too stupid to figure it out. Okay, then at least we got rid of Manafort. God bless. Guy's a clear criminal, convicted criminal. When you don't pay your taxes, you're stealing basically from all other taxpayers. I can't imagine why any conservative in their right mind would support a crook like this, unless you were actively and enthusiastically, backing someone despite the fact that they're a criminal, and you just don't care about the law, you don't care about law enforcement, you don't care about right or wrong, and you just want to back someone because they're on your team. Now, conservatives, I'm sure you wouldn't want to do that, so I'm sure you're celebrating what happened today, which is a win for all Americans.
Well, there is another individual tied to the Trump campaign and to Donald Trump that pleaded guilty today, so let's get to that story. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has reached a plea deal, and this was an agreement over the payments that he made to various women. This is money, hush money that he had paid them. Reached this plea agreement with prosecutors investigating payments he made to women on behalf of Trump, a deal that does not include cooperation with federal authorities. This is an important part. The plea deal does not indicate that he must cooperate with federal authorities. Now, with that said, as part of the deal, Cohen is expected to plead guilty to multiple counts of campaign finance violations, tax fraud, and bank fraud, and that's according to 3 sources who spoke to CNN. The deal would also include jail time and a substantial monetary fine. Now, since this plea deal indicates that he does not have to cooperate with federal prosecutors, well, then what is this about? Why would they accept a plea deal? Well, one thing to take into consideration is the sentencing. So he's going to serve time behind bars. He's pleaded guilty, and right now they're trying to decide whether he spends 3 years behind bars or 50 months behind bars. Prosecutors want 50 months. Cohen and his lawyers are arguing for 3 years.
This is awfully strange. So first, though,
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
down goes Cohen, down goes Cohen, down goes Cohen. Says who? Says the judge and Michael Cohen, actually.
Yes. So let me tell you what the plea deal does include, because this is late breaking news in the day. So Yashar Ali tweeted the following: Cohen just described in court how he violated campaign finance laws by arranging payment for Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. He said he violated federal law in coordination with and at the direction of a federal candidate for office, obviously meaning Trump.
So super important that he's saying at the direction of a candidate. So if he did not take direction from Donald Trump and just did it on his own, he might be the only one who's guilty of campaign finance violations. But if Trump told him to do it, and that is apparently what he's saying, Trump is also guilty.
Yeah.
So handcuffs? Okay, hold.
But there's more.
Okay, we'll do more, and then I'm
Okay.
going to explain why the twists and turns in this story and what might be happening.
So Bloomberg reporter Justin Cenk tweeted more about what Cohen had confessed to, and this is the relevant part. Cohen says he acted for the purpose of influencing election. That's the second bullet point in his tweet. Also, Cohen violated campaign law at direction of unnamed candidate, and we all know who that candidate is. Again, Donald Trump.
Unnamed candidate?
Says who?
One of the famous Michael Cohen appearances on television where he said that. Okay, so why is this weird? Because why is Michael Cohen agreeing to go to prison for a number of years? Why doesn't he just cut a deal where he doesn't go to prison at all and turn in Trump? Okay, that's twist number one. Twist number two is, but he actually kind of did give evidence on Trump.
He did, yeah.
Not kind of, definitely. He said, I worked at the direction of a candidate, et cetera, right? So why not get a better deal? And then number three, the third woman is not mentioned. And maybe we're wrong about it. There's the 2 women that we know about that Trump had as mistresses and Cohen paid off. There's the third woman who Elliot Broidy, the Republican fundraiser, says he slept with and paid off, but that is not mentioned here. Now, one theory out there is that she also slept with Trump and not Broidy. That's a theory, but maybe that theory isn't true because Michael Cohen didn't name her. Or he's saying, now, look, here's what I got so far. But we haven't, that's the appetizer. We haven't gotten to the main course. The main course might be the third woman. The main course might be, much more importantly, connections to Russians. So Michael Cohen could either have just this, or he could have the rest of the iceberg. So the games that are being played in terms of what he's angling for, that's a little harder to discern from the outside.
Right.
Is he angling? Is he saying to Trump, this is the stuff everybody already knows I have on you. Now you know the other stuff, and I'm telling you I'm gonna take 3 years in prison, right? So get to it and pardon me, right? Or that's all he's got. Or the prosecutors are playing hardball and saying you're going to prison no matter what, you better give me everything. So that part is hard to figure out. But we know Michael Cohen did it because he just pled guilty, right? And we know that he did it at the direction of the president, broke campaign finance laws. So tick, 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 tick. Look, let me be absolutely clear about this. If the person that was on the other end of this was you, if Michael Cohen says, I broke campaign finance laws because I was working in coordination with Bob, right? You'd be arrested immediately.
Right.
Immediately, right? It's the president, so it's a little dicier, and he's got a lot more power and he's got a lot more privilege. But rationally speaking, tick, 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 tick.
Let's consider what's going to happen in the future. So first of all, the question of whether or not Cohen is going to turn on Trump or whether he's turned on Trump. Like that's done. Like remember, it was his camp, Cohen and his own personal lawyer who released audio of Trump indicating that Trump was acknowledging the payment to Stormy Daniels. So that didn't come from a leak, that came from Michael Cohen. Also, Cohen just threw Trump under the bus in this plea agreement. So he's already turned on Trump. There has been a review of all the documents that were obtained in the raids, in the multiple raids for Michael Cohen, right? In his office, in his apartment, yada yada. And the reason why they did a review of those documents was to try to decipher whether or not any of those documents are protected under attorney-client privilege. And what that review found was that a small fraction of those documents are protected under attorney-client privilege, meaning those documents are fair game. And so we'll see what happens in the future, but it's not, based on my read of this, and again, this is my analysis, it is not looking good for Trump. So
again, let me lay out two scenarios to give you a fuller picture. One scenario is this is all Cohen's got, and he's like, okay, 50 months, 3 years, whatever. I make all the medallion cases go away. If you're not familiar with that, that's the scams he was running with taxi cabs in New York. I make the campaign finance law violations go away, and I've got all these other issues. And look, I didn't have that much on Trump, so I'm just giving the prosecutors what I got. I'm taking a plea deal like anybody would, right? In that situation. The other possibility is that he's saying, okay, look, this is the stuff that you got me dead to right on, and so I'm going to give you this stuff, but we're still negotiating for the bigger enchilada, right? And so maybe the 3-year sentence goes away if he gives up the bigger enchilada, and prosecutors might be playing hardball with him. Yeah. Like, we don't care, Michael, you're going to prison, okay? So basically the bottom line is one shoe has fallen here. We're waiting for the other shoe, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So if prosecutors come out and say, that's it, that's all we got on Michael Cohen, then Trump is in massive trouble over the campaign finance law violations. Maybe he survives that, because
I think it's definitely likely that he would survive that.
I mean, because he breaks so many laws, and he's just going to say, well, what do you mean? Of course I pay off the mistresses in the middle of the election, and his followers will be like, oh yeah, of course you break the law. What's the big deal?
But to that point, I mean, think about how Trump and his cronies continuously move the goalposts, right? So at first they were in denial, or at least denying publicly that they had paid anyone off. And then before you know it, they're like, oh yeah, of course we paid everyone off. I mean, but we didn't break any finance laws.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Or it's a much bigger deal and Trump is definitely gone if it's campaign finance laws, the third mistress, or Russia, etc. combined, right? But back to campaign finance laws for one last point. If any other president had done this, if Barack Obama had clearly violated campaign finance laws and someone just pleaded guilty saying, yeah, I worked with Barack Obama to violate the law and to pay off his mistresses who were adult film stars, etc. Now that part's not relevant, but it is for Republicans, right? They would have been like, oh, the thug in the White House He ruined the moral integrity of the office. He bringing in these, these porn stars and then breaking the laws to cover it up. Impeachment would have happened this afternoon. I mean, I don't know that they could have voted in time, but they certainly would have started the proceedings immediately, and you know it. Even if you're the MAGAest of the MAGAs, you know that they would have done it to Obama, and you would have cheerled for it. You would have gotten out your pom-poms, and you would have pretended to be outraged, etc. So even on the bare minimum, whether you were unsure or not about impeachment before, and I think that was a fair question before, this appears to be a clear violation of the law. Than any other president, we'd be having an impeachment conversation. So we should be having that right now, not later, not if he broke 7 other laws, but right now for this clear violation of the law, illegal criminality. By the way, with Cohen and Manafort both going down today, I've got Trump. He's all worked up, and we got him on tape from the White House. And then I've got Mueller talking to Trump.
Show me the bottle.
And when Trump goes down, we're all gonna say,
if he goes down, yeah. And by the way, just a quick clarification. They moved the goalpost by denying that Trump had the affairs. That's what I meant to say, right? And then now it's like, yeah, of course he slept with those women. Like now it's not like there's no question about it. They can't even deny it. They've accepted it, they admit to it. And it's fascinating how his base just doesn't seem to care.
All those evangelical leaders and almost all the evangelical voters that are right wing, thank you for proving our point. We always thought you were full of crap. And it turns out we were 100% right. You never cared about so-called morality. You never cared about your so-called principles, and you never cared about the Bible and what you claim it represents. Now you're celebrating a guy who paid off adult film stars and had sex with them during marriage while his wife had just delivered. That is what you told us was the worst of the worst. And now you applaud him daily. So thank you for proving what we knew all along, that you're raging hypocrites and we should never take you seriously.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Erik Prince is pushing for the privatization of the military, and it would be disastrous. We want to give you the details on that and the potential of Donald Trump accepting that proposal.
And one more thing about Trump. Look, we got a great anti-corruption story about Elizabeth Warren, and she's going to be on the network tonight at 8:05 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss that interview. She came on the Young Turks specifically to talk about her drive against corruption because she knows you guys care about it so much. But there's another story in the news today that I think could spell doom for Trump because it undermines the people who are going to either vote for impeachment or not vote for impeachment. So I think Russia has miscalculated. We'll tell you about that a little bit later as well.